It's live.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in the past, present, or future, wherever and whenever you are. Welcome to another edition of the Living World of Darkness Changeling 20th venue. We find ourselves with one Kararis, keeper of the Diamond Word, up Daron, knight of the county, standing just a little outside the entranceway in the New York streets to the Manhattan barony. He's currently waiting for two others to join him for what's going to be hopefully an educational tour of the county proper and for well, possibly some better understanding of their new situation here in life. So for now, he's standing waiting for them to make their arrival.
Arrivals are being made. Um, Probably by cab, I presume. Like a
Arlen will be in the cab with Rhea, fussing over her demeanor and appearance.
she found in their apartment for some reason, probably because they got it free at some sort of a restaurant or something. She found a game of Mikado, and she decided that that would be the best way to, put her hair up by putting the entire game of Mikado sticks in her hair, holding it up.
Or, or Arlen suggests you could not do that.
Sorry.
But it looks nice. It's awesome.
It looks
Look,
silly.
people are looking. No, I'm not looking silly.
Yeah, they're looking at you because you look silly. Look, I'm
I
gonna take
don't.
those out.
No, stay away. I'll stab you.
With what? Your Mikado sticks?
Yeah.
Go ahead, as long as they're not in your hair.
She'll take one out and prod him with it. She won't actually stab him because I don't know how they're looking in England, but here in the Netherlands they actually have pointy
He
sticks,
he he he,
pointy
he
ends.
Usually
bats
they
your
are.
hand with one as he
Yeah,
steals one out of your hair.
I don't do that. You're ruining it. This
I'm not ruining
art.
anything. I am fixing the situation which you have put upon yourself.
And there is nothing but stairs as you both go by down there. Not because of the scene that's being made, but not only but mainly because just for that moment you both in this walking down the street just seem more real and more bright and beautiful and more alive than everything else in this city. It's like nothing everything's but heads turning after you before finally you're making your way. And there's Charles. He at first had been having his eyes closed. It's very clear, even in his fey mane, whether while he doesn't have bags under his eyes, it's more like deep cracks underneath, fracturing within the marble of his skin, showing that his exhaustion. But he finally opens his stained glass window's eyes very, very slowly when you guys make your way, and he hears you guys, and he gives a smile, and he wasn't slouching before, but he just imperceptibly almost straightens up just a little bit more, and he makes his way over and he holds out his hand. Ah, Mr. and Mrs. Noel, pleasure to see you both again.
Lyra will start curtsying and then realizing, oh wait. So instead, she'll kind of awkwardly hold out her hand,
Yep, and he'll
like
take it and shake it.
straightforward.
He'll take it and shake, and he holds out his hand to Timothy as well. I know I'm saying the humans' names, but that's what I know at the moment.
Yeah, shake his
Please,
hand.
yeah.
You may simply call me Arlen or Guri, whatever suits your tastes.
Ah,
I'm
well,
in a firmer state of mind than I was before.
well, I just want to make sure. Well, I'm not sure exactly what your preferences are to be called. But as of right now, at the very least, keeping an air of discretion is probably for the best as of right now. So please forgive my informality here in public. We can do proper introductions if we wish once we get into the freehold. So, if you will please follow me. Once we get inside, I'll be happy to address questions before we get onto this onto the main matter of why I've brought you out here today. He says he walks you towards what seems to be like think of it like a sort of like an alleyway. It'd be really suspicious for there, but there seems to be like a really like old stained like part of the wall that for normal eyes would look like it's just some very blotchy discolored portion of the bricks, but for us it looks more like an actual doorway. And Charles takes a quick look and goes, "If you please follow me." And he raps on the door briefly, and it practically melts away. And in from that light comes the light of chimerical reality, just bright colors, as he steps through into the Manhattan Freehold. And the
Um,
Manhattan Freehold itself. Oh, go ahead.
a quick question: is freehold is considered someone's home, right?
For the most part, yes, but we're just going onto the main grounds, not inside it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Then
Just
the
checking a certain flaw.
yeah. It's going to be very interesting if I understand if there's a flaw. To explain with the baronal ones, they're a lot more open. It's not just necessarily a private sort of thing, especially since the main ones, the baronal freeholds, are all linked together in this one big whole sort of thing and open to the public. So yes, it's technically the home of the baron, but it's still open and up to the public. I hope that answers it, or if that might be a certain issue.
Mm, I think that answers it.
Mm,
It's specifically for a home.
mm.
So for now, I think I'm good.
Okay. If we'll just say it's fine. If it turns out later in post it's not, well,
Yeah.
we'll just say it was okay. So we'll just say we got you permission before or whatever needs to happen. I don't know. Either way. Um, so Charles walks you through, and the landscape of the Manhattan Freehold looks a little more along the lines of a traditional sort of like castle. You got like the rose red stonework rising up into this big sort of keep that just expands for miles in certain directions, and it seems like there's like all sorts of precipices, towers, and it looks like there's just rooms upon rooms for people to live there. There's actually a mass of people, like soldiers doing drills in the courtyard. There's a mass of there's a definitely a big portion for stables and stalls. And in the center of the courtyard is this. It takes you guys a moment to really get it because it looks like it's a statue of what uh, you think for a moment. You recognize the light glittering off it as it's like glass, multicolored glass shards all hanging suspended into the air. Um, but it's almost vaguely in the shape of some kind of humanoid figure, like just being it's like think like a glass statue, but someone threw a rock through it and it's just shattering apart. Is the best way I can describe it.
Oh, how
It's a little
awful.
hard. Yeah, how awful, indeed. And there is a giant plaque on there, and but until you guys unless you guys are really super perceptive on it, until we get closer, you're probably not going to be able to read it. But yes, so Charles holds out his hands. Now for more proper introductions, as he gives a bow. Sir Kararis, keeper of the diamond word, Apadaran, at your service.
Ah, Chancellor Chancellor Arlen Gree of the Palace of Crystal Hearts. A pleasure and privilege to be here.
Um, uh, Lyra will finally make her curtsy and simply
Hmm.
says, "I'm Rhiannon."
Rhiannon, Arlen, welcome to the first stop of our tour of the County of New Hope. As you are both residents of the barony of Manhattan, it's important at the very least you know exactly where your entrance to the baronial freehold is in case you should ever need to present yourself towards the baron and baroness themselves. But also, I'm taking this opportunity not only to show you the barony of Manhattan, but to give you an idea of the landscape of the entirety of the County of New Hope and hopefully answer questions you may have of your new existence here in the Autumn World. So, before we begin the tour, do we have any questions or concerns we wish to address at this time?
Who made that? As she points to the statue.
Ah, he says as he sort of looks at that. I was hoping to save that for a little bit once we got the tour started, but if we
Oh,
want answers, I can take you there now.
no, it's fine. I can wait. I was just curious. It looks marvelous.
I'm glad you think so, he says, and he smiles just a little too wide with those diamond fangs. Anything else? Any other questions or concerns?
Um, if we wish to return here, I presume we would use the same method that was used just now.
Yes. This would be the main way to get here. However, there are certain paths, trods between other freeholds in order to get here as well. But we will be addressing that very shortly as well as part of our tour.
I see. And he kind of looks around. Sorry, what does he see again? He sees the
Uh,
statue, the plaque, and
the barrel freehold itself, like we are sort of outside it. It's a big giant courtyard right now. There seems to be like a big there is an actual like hedge maze somewhere in the back of it. There's stalls. There's some training grounds and stuff with people with what seems to be commoner guards doing certain drills right now. Um, the castle itself is like this rose brick sort of structure that raises up really high, like with towers and parapets and stuff like that. But it seems to stretch in almost an absurdly long distance, like it's way bigger than any castle should have any right to be. And it just seems to stretch for miles in either direction.
excellent.
Mhm.
Um, any questions? I believe I would. Any further questions? I believe I would ask would be. I believe will be answered very shortly.
Very well. Any questions that might come up during the tour, I'll be glad to answer them. And let us start. This is the baronial freehold of Manhattan. Of course, there are a few other freeholds smattered around the county of around the county itself. But for the main purposes of our tours, we are going to be hitting the main baronial freeholds as well as the freehold of the governy of Brooklyn. I would like to take you to Staten Island, but that will be a trip for another day. For this time, we will be sticking with the main four. He says, I was heading a project that involved a unification our of the freeholds of the main baronial freeholds, as well as the cauldron houses of House Daron, as you can feel in the air, though I'm sure this is still a very new experience for you, you will find, even in any other freeholds you manage to find yourself in, that the air and glamour here is far more enriched. It is because of the. He sort of thinks for a moment. Have you had an explanation of balefires?
No, it hasn't been
Um,
covered.
then I guess I will have to begin. As I'm sure you're both aware, the gray world out there is rather dry. It's hard to find that spark of glamour that infuses and enriches us. Sometimes that has to be cultivated from people in order to empower essences and enrich the landscape. There are certain, it has been found in certain places that certain natural fonts of glamour spring up. And it's around these fonts that freeholds are made in order to tap into and harness their power. Every freehold is its own its own standing structure. Um, every space is unique with their own unique rules based on the people who own the freehold. People who hold a freehold uh, have a sort of title of their own, known as freeholder. Granted, it may not be as grand or grandiose as a squire or a knight or anything along those lines, but it still is a very important position. To hold a freehold and to guard it is to protect a pure font of glamour, of magic that keeping it burning in this reality. Does that make sense?
I believe so. OC, I'll be asking for a write up later.
For sure. Mm. However, uh, due to a project that I headed, um, and with at the time during my service to the Baron Sebastian and the Baroness Amari, he says he gestures to the Manhattan Freehold, is that I had suggested a joint venture with several of the baronies to link the freeholds to pool our resources and our powers together as a sign of unity after the fall of Brooklyn and this realization that we as people had failed in our duties to the commoners and to the nobility proper, and it has succeeded. So this is one reason why the transition between the freeholds are going to be so simple, because while we are looking at the Manhattan freehold right now, it connects to Queens, to the Bronx, and to Brooklyn now, as well as to the five cauldron houses of the different baronies, and one other commoner freehold. So, he says as he looks at this, we are the barony of Manhattan has gone through quite a bit of shakeup. Once, when I first arrived here, it was under the rule, and at this point, he starts walking them down past like the training guards, but he's making a slow circle towards the statue. The Baroness Iona and her sole knight, Sir Carol. And he sort of gives a wry smile, but it seems a little bit more of a grimace at that. I myself at the time was made squire to Sir Carol, and due to he sort of sighs, there was an assassination done upon Iona. Have you, I'm sure I don't need to explain too much, but she was taken by cold iron.
Awkward silence.
Hmm. Now, out of question, is that an awkward silence because we don't know what that is, or is it an awkward silence because that's a terrible tragedy?
Because that's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
In his case, in Lyra's case, it's more because um, she's very interested in everything that's going on around them.
Mhm.
Um, she seems to follow your story only half, and she kind of blinks at the cold iron thing. She's like, "Er?" She understands the gravity of an assassination, though. Like, don't get me wrong, she's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
without empathy, but yeah.
Sadly, Charles might not pick up on the fact that she's maybe not getting the full gravity of cold iron on that one yet, but he'll continue on. At the time, the Count of the time, Count Maledicect, had after the loss of Iona and managed to bring the knight, Sir Dax, to trial, who had done the assassination himself. His sentence has been done, much to the chagrin to many. Some are find that that Dax got off too easy when it came to his punishment. Others feel it was fair. I myself feel that it was a. He sort of sighs and he thinks there. I do not believe that the abomination of death by cold iron should be met with equal measure. I feel that that is a cruel and ignorant, and it robs, even though one would dare to so much as snuff out a dream from reality forever, that our numbers are already too few, and that to perpetuate that sort of crime onto the criminal itself is a makes us no better. So in some respects, I am grateful that he was not executed with cold iron. However, I feel his punishment was too light. Banishment to be left as a paraplegic is one thing, to not know where he is and to not allow those that were insulted and those that suffered the most closest to Iona to have their say and have their vengeance upon it. That, I feel, was the wrong call. But the
What,
judgment is done.
if I may ask,
Hmm.
who made the decision?
Count Maldesec. May he rest in peace.
Oh, did he say Count
Count Maldesec.
Madasak? May he rest in peace?
Yeah, may he rest in peace.
There have been many deaths.
There have indeed. Maldesec died because due to I might be skipping ahead in the story a bit, but Maldesec died out of from age. That's something you're going to find here very shortly. Is that our lives are no longer counted in the spans of a passing dream or the millennia. We now are counting our minutes, our years, our days. Maledicec died of old age because his mortal frame died of old age.
How does that work?
Hmm. Well, he says, I'm sure you felt it since you've gotten in here. You can, at least I know I have, consciously aware of the body and its limitations. You can feel the stiffness of it from time to time. Sometimes you wake up and you feel an ache there
She's
that we
heavy.
have no reason for. You feel your cells, you can almost feel them
Timothy kind
dying.
of. Sorry.
You can
Um,
feel yourself caught within a prison of putrefying flesh.
Yeah. Lyra is heavy.
Timothy is 18, due to be 19 next year. Americans have a life expectancy of approximately 78 years. I have time.
Maldesek, Maldesek, I believe, managed to get to 84.
Are these all your men? As she points at the soldiers training.
Charles laughs. Oh, no, 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 no. I used to be the knight of, well, like I said, I'm skipping ahead of the story. They are not mine men. They are the men of the Knights of the Barony of Manhattan and the Knights of the Baroness Amari and the Baron Sebastian, which I think Baron Sebastian is the good way to segue into this. And it's about this point they're very close to the statue now as he's getting there. Mr. Count Maldesect set up his son, the Baron Sebastian, to become the new Baron of Manhattan. It wasn't necessarily a very popular move by most people. People felt it screamed of nepotism in a world where, in this world, it is a meritocracy rather than a uh, right of birth to inherit a throne. But the decision was made by the count. His son was put on, and of course, I, the squire of Sir Carol, followed his rule. Now, he says as he gets there, I did mention that I had become a knight of Manhattan before I was eventually promoted to knight of the county. And it's about this point they're standing in front of the statue. And as you're getting there, as you stand there, and now you're more in depth a bit, you can see now. I mean, it's very much like it's a permanently suspended, like something in mid shattering. The Even the internal organs of the individual can be seen shattering apart, save for the heart. The heart is kept perfectly intact, suspended, right in the middle of this shattering sort of mosaic. And but you're able to pick up certain details. You can see parts like the fragments of the face, of the eye, of the nose, of the lips, of the hands of the individual standing there. And on the plaque, you see it reads, "Here stands Sir Carol, uh, op Ilunid, Oathbreaker. His word was as fragile as glass. Now he is eternal as diamond." And there's a long silence there. This doesn't have to be a warning, he says as he's staring at this. And there's a sort of very twisted look of pride as he's looking at this individual that it's beginning to dawn. And even I won't even make you roll kenning. You can tell this was a person. This was Sir Carol. This isn't just a replica of glass put up here.
Yeah.
He says, but Sir Carol broke his oaths to me. He broke contracts between others. He thought himself to be above the rules and the laws and the words of the dreaming and those bound by it. And I had the distinct pleasure of making sure he was shattered for it. I do not take kindly to oath breakers. And it's very much a thing I have witnessed here. That there are those that find that words lack meaning, potency, or purpose. You will find many who find that their word means nothing.
Disgusting.
Mm, indeed it is. So I set Sir Carol up here as a reminder to those that oath breakers are not to be taken lightly or to be given pity. So, with that, I became the Knight of Manhattan, the only knight at the time. Eventually, there was the union of the Baroness Amari and the Baron Sebastian, and there was a wedding that was attacked by a group of radical commoners who believed that not only do the nobility deserve to be extinguished, but any commoners that followed the nobilities or the traditions should also be eliminated. And they were killing not just changelings or fae, they were killing the human and dreamers that were at that wedding as well.
What became of them?
Those that weren't slaughtered by myself and others, eventually, through a joint effort between the baronies of Manhattan and Queens and the at the time newly created barony of Brooklyn, governy of Brooklyn, led a raid onto their main hideout, and we managed to capture the heads and the greater majority of the ranters themselves. Those that were not, they were subsequently branded so that in their next lives, when they come back, all will know their crimes. Oh, that is something I should probably explain. See, he says, gives a sigh here on this one. This is not a subject he's very. Mm, it's definitely a subject he's not very keen on, but he's bringing it up anyway. See, it is very well known to the changelings that we uh, we live only as long as our human shells live, or we will die when killed. And in order to preserve themselves when the shattering happened, the split between Arcadia and the Outem world, they decided to find another method in order to maintain their eternal lives. And they decided to do this through reincarnation. The Faithful would travel to a new host upon death, and when certain conditions were met, be reborn in that new lifetime. They call this the Changeling Way. And if it is something that you happen to be interested in, and he sort of says this like, of course you're not going to be, but then it is a path that you yourselves could take. I myself have no interest in it, for to reincarnate means you could forget who you were, forget who you are,
There's kind of
and
a
possibly.
brief. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
There's a brief look to Ria and a slight look of concern, as if this is what has happened to her.
There are those that believe there are other paths, but as of right now, most of them are unsubstantiated. I myself fall in the camp that if I am going to fade out of existence, I am going to find at least another way. I have no interest in the changeling way myself. That's another story. And he sort of gives a look at the two of them. You'll have to come to your own decisions when that time comes. But for now, you're here, you're alive, and in young bodies, barring accident or murder or danger. I expect you both to live very long lives.
Um, Lyra is kind of looking at the two of them. Her eyes seems to grow slightly wider as she speaks up. Um, she says, "The paths you seek are troubled. One takes you from tears and leaves you empty. The other is still unknown."
And he sort of stops there and he sort of looks at her. And I'm sorry, could you repeat what she just said?
Sure. She said the paths you seek are troubled. One takes you from tears and leaves you empty. The other is still unknown.
There's a very long pause as he's looking at that one. As he's listening to that, it's like, ah, yes indeed. Yes indeed. Still. And he opens his eyes. Well, there are paths that we all have to walk one day. Now, onto the greater, onto the rest of the story of at least the Manhattan saga. I had as the night of Manhattan and the many shifts in structure from Iona's death to the punishment of Sir Carol and the wedding massacre, popular opinion in Manhattan was not doing so well, especially with the commoner revolt in Brooklyn, but I will go over that once we reach Brooklyn. I had suggested to the Baron that a sort of alliance between the remaining baronial freeholds, so that we one to aid in showing our openness and our willingness to change and have open arms to the commoners that have been so snubbed and lacking the protection that they deserve from us, and to the other nobility of the rest of the Kingdom of Apples, showing that we in the county of the New Hope are not resting on our laurels, that we are willing to move forward and become greater than we were.
Is that why the bad dreams happened?
Hmm. The bad dreams are something else, he says. That is another story entirely. He tilts his head. There are two powerful entities known as Mara and Baku. Mara, the mother of nightmares, and Baku, the creator of dreams. They do battle every night, or whatever counts a toots' night, back as far as deep as they are. And whoever wins the battle sends nightmares or dreams, and not just standard things. These are bright and potent and full of meaning within both of them. And most of the time, they end their battles in a draw, and thus we are not overwhelmed or bombarded by either. However, the raid on the Ranters had unfortunately led us to discover that the Ranters had somehow managed to capture Baku. Their intent was to reprogram Baku. The thing about Mara and Baku's dreams is these are not just things that are created and they shove within us. They are things from within ourselves that they draw out and make us see what they wanted to. So every dream and every nightmare is personal to each and every one of us and bring a meaning of some sort to each of us. What the Ranters wanted to do with Baku was to change him. They wished to shape him into a form so that the dreams he created would be universal for all, that all would dream of violent revolution.
That seems woefully short-sighted.
It is indeed. And as we are unique expressions of dreams in many forms, what happens to us when dreams become become strangled and forced on a one singular path? What happens to the rest of us?
Indeed.
So that is our current predicament right now. We had managed to save Baku from the Ranters. However, because of the manner of the assault on the Ranters' hideout, Baku was weakened. And unfortunately, we have to fix Baku in order to bring the balance back again. Myself and a few others have discovered the way to fix the issue, and I know the path now on where their battleground is. I'm hoping within the next week or two that we'll all be prepared to make that journey in and be able to fix what has been broken.
Is there anything I or my sister might be able to do to assist you in this particular course of action?
Charles sort of sighs and he thinks for a moment. There may be. As of right now, the individuals needed for the main part of the structure. There is one that I have discovered, and I will leave them nameless for the time being for his privacy. One who has discovered that one that has discovered their dreams, didn't say he, their dreams leads directly to their battleground. And those of the particular skill of oromancy can actually walk in dreams. I don't assume either of you know that skill.
I do not. Would you, Ria?
Huh? Sorry.
This-
What? That was that was the thing. What did you say?
You
the
wouldn't happen to
power.
know oromancy, would you?
Um, a little.
Hmm. That could be useful. I myself know the first steps of that path, but having someone else, possibly of a greater skill level, might actually be more helpful. But um, aside from that, the other necessary individuals are those that have been deemed as sorcerers, those that have mastered a particular art. And when he says art, it's with a little bit of disdain, like that's really the name we decided to call this. But and myself and three others have been selected for this task. Now, I'm not sure as to what all the dangers would be there. However, there is one other thing that I'm concerned about, but I'll address that from prying ears. He says as he sort of like looks around at the rest of the freehold in case anyone might accidentally listen over to their conversation. Well, anything else before we continue?
By all means.
All right, well.
He looks to Ria and just casually, his hand just kind of taps her waist as if to keep her attention.
She waves at something like to the side of her head, almost as if she's actually brushing away like an annoying fly or something like that. And then brightly smiles at her brother.
Do you have any questions for Sir Kararis?
No, but it's a lot of information. Welcome, though. Please don't get me wrong.
Well, like I said, I don't wish this to be an overwhelming diatribe for you all, but given the nature of things, and I would like you all to be at least a little bit up to speed before meeting up with Count Lijon. And he sort of gestures. As I said, eventually the alliance was made. The balefires of Bronx, Manhattan, and Queens were all linked, along with a commoner freehold and the five cauldron houses of the county of New York. So, and it was not too long after that I was given the privilege to serve under the Count Lijon directly. Ah, yes, Count Lijon. As I said, Maldesec had passed. And I think with this, our next stop would probably best be Queens, he says, as he sort of starts leading them along a path of trod. And for the most part, the landscape doesn't seem to change all that much. I mean, the building itself seems to keep stretching along the miles as they're walking along. But then there's a change. The brickwork changes in style, it changes in coloration and shape, but it's like almost like it blurs and becomes something else. And I've never gotten a really good description of the Queen's Freehold, so I can't really give it too good of a description. I apologize on that one. But here in the Queen's Freehold, there's the smell of like sandalwood and medicine. There's the sound of waterfalls coming from certain other areas. And amidst the changelings that are walking around there, there are other stranger entities. Um, Giant people who stand maybe just a little taller than a troll, looking more like giant living stone golems. There's certain creatures that seem a little more aquatic based. Um, Unless you have the appropriate knowledges, I don't know what you need to roll, but they're none of he. Um, Upon the death of, as they bring to the Queen's Freehold, Queens, I will have to admit, I never really met the Baron, the former Baron of Queens. At the time, Maldesec had invited the Count of the Kingdom of Willows to our county as a sign of goodwill, and we had met many from many different sides. Excuse me. Unfortunately, the Baron of Queens suffered a tragic yacht boating accident and was taken from us all too soon. And for a time, Queens was without a baron or even a baroness. Basically, we had a knight. There was a knight acting instead until a new baron or baroness proved themselves worthy of the position. It was about this time, and just during the time of the overthrow of the former Baron of Brooklyn, and the death of Count Maldesec, that at the time Baron Lijon and Baroness Mariposa of the, I don't remember Lijon's kingdom. It's in California, all I know, in the Kingdom of Sands from Mariposa. They had been selected by Queen Mab, the ruler of the Kingdom of Apples, to be offered the position to become count or countess. originally there was going to be a tournament to decree who would to decide who would best serve the point. Traditions as all things. To see who would champion these individuals to become baron. Oh no, become count or countess. Whoever did not get the county seat would then become the new baron or baroness of Queens. The tournament never happened due to the voice of one William Black. It was uh, it was decided ultimately that perhaps what the people wanted wasn't a tournament, and rather a good, strong leader. And so, after a discussion, Count Lijon became the count, and Mariposa became the new Baroness of Queens. With her, she has brought a number of individuals, or at least I say brought, that's not really the case. Several individuals have moved here following her. These people, he says, as he sort of gives a very, in the best way he can do, a polite gesture towards the Nunnehi. He's like, these are the Nunnehi. They are Fae, much like ourselves, but far more in tune with the natural world of the autumn world. Their customs are a little stranger than ours, but I assure you they are very, very interesting people and very delightful conversation partners. At least the ones I've met. But here we are now. Baroness Mariposa has been focusing most of her efforts on trying to enrich her own barony to make it something worth a shining example. Granted, with the linking of the freeholds, everyone's freehold, the barrel and freeholds, everyone's barony is of interest to each other, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be focusing on our own individual people in front of us. And such, Mariposa has been indeed doing cultural enrichment programs and working on building a better relationship with the people of Queens. Any questions so far?
Not in particular, no. He taps Ria again.
So basically, the reason why this place is like it is because of this Mr. Black that we met in the theater.
You mean by who has the county position? Or you mean something more?
No, just hats.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Black's productivity for being the voice of the people has indeed had certain effects. We'll go into more of that as we continue with our journey and into the Brooklyn freeholds. But yes, the reason why Count Lijon is Count is because the voice of William Black was heard, and that ultimate decision was made. Now, I don't want you to think that Mr. Black's voice is the end-all, be-all of of how things run here, he says with a smile.
Is that what
But
he thinks?
I'm sure he would say no, that's not the case. But he says, and there's a sort of like wryness of his smile as he says that. But he definitely has a way of getting people onto his side, whether the idea is good or not. He speaks to people's passions, and he's very good at it.
Hmm.
Now, although I will say, it's been, he sort of closes his eyes for a moment, rather blissfully quiet, he says, and he sort of gives a little chuckle at that, since Lejean has taken over. I think there was a few hiccups, but I haven't heard anything in a overt speech from William Black for quite a while now. But we'll get into that a little later. Anything else?
No.
Then with that, on to the Bronx. Now, we are going to be walking through the links between the freeholds. However, I do recommend that you at least be relatively wary. Not because that the people of Bronx aren't unwelcoming. The people of Bronx have been, unfortunately, suffering a great deal of issues. Not at the fault of the Baron. Baron, I don't remember this Baron's name, but I promise you, out of character, he's great. But that's another story. um, but anyway, he goes, the Baron of Bronx has been working very, very hard. In fact, one of the reasons why this has been very useful to Bronx with the linking of the freeholds is the fact that now we're all in this together. We have the county's health in the greater health of the county in mind, as opposed just to our individual baronies. See, something you're going to learn here as you're here, that there are certain roads that come into the dreaming proper in between our world and this. These places are called trods. And I'm sure that's no surprise, trods are trods. But more specifically, these trods lead from our world to the to parts of the dreaming. There are paths, however, that are corrupted with nightmare, and these nightmare trods, even before the Mara Baku situation, have been showing up within Bronx quite often. As a matter of fact, I don't think they've been entirely resolved as of yet. As I said, the Baron's been very busy trying to keep them on lockdown, and now with the addition of the with the addition of the uh, nightmares we've been suffering, I'm afraid it's only gotten worse. However, we are all doing our best to keep each other supported. And like I said, I can't really describe the Bronx Freehold all that much. And I will also admit, as Charar says, as they get there and they're looking at the place, once again, the shape of the buildings changed, but they all seem very much linked together in one big, like, ongoing, like one big, huge, like, building, just connecting. But once you reach a certain point, the stonework changes, the design changes, and everything along those lines. I will admit, the history of Bronx is still rather unknown to me. I wish I could give you a little bit more information about Bronx's political history. The only thing I can say for sure is that the Baron, who has been sitting here, has been sitting here for a good while, and despite the troubles and tribulations of his people, he is very well respected. Now, unless there's anything else, any other questions or concerns, we'll make our way to Brooklyn.
Hmm.
Very well. Brooklyn it is. And they make their way down. And once again, it's the shift. Brooklyn's history is a very different one. Formerly, this formerly Brooklyn was a barony. It was ruled over by the Baron Isidore of House Ailiel. However, it had come to the attention of many that Isidore was a individual who rested on his laurels of power. His people, for the most part, what's the phrase I believe that was said about Marie Antoinette? It's like "let them eat cake." I believe that's the thing. Baron Isidore has been discovered as of late. Had no real interest or concerns over maintaining the health or the safety of his people. In fact, a freehold had fallen to a Thalain. And
A
when
what?
the freeholders at the time, yes, indeed. The Thalain goblin, formerly known as Absinthe, may he rot forever, was had been working with the ranters, and there was a group of boggins who owned a particular freehold, now titled the Freehold of the Free Hair, which is something important I will discuss as well, but we'll get there in just a moment. Freehold of the Free Hair had laid siege to these boggins in their freehold, and they had requested aid from Isidore, and Isidore ignored them. With ranters running the streets of Brooklyn and a Thalain in its midst, Isidore ignored these problems. I believe there was a corby of redcaps running around at one point who had cold iron pickaxes, and I believe he was more interested in having his flamingo ball.
What's a flamingo ball?
You know what a flamingo is, don't you? Or at least,
Yes.
Lyra, yes. So imagine that the theme of your ball is flamingos.
You all dance around on one foot.
Hmm. And wear pink and have feathers and, well, eat copious amounts of brownies. There is very much a look of absolute, like, fucking disgust on Charles's face as he's talking about Isidore. Needless to say, once the ranters had attacked the wedding and killed several commoners, including a few who were considered very close to certain members that are now on the Council of Brooklyn, there was the call for rebellion. William Black, along with his motley of changelings, led the charge, led for the calls of Isidore to resign, to step down, and eventually what it came down to was ultimately a duel. A duel of the champion of Isidore and the champion of William Black for who would get the right to rule over Brooklyn. The champion, Councilwoman Misha, champion of the people, won. And as such, Isidore, who had gone mad, is currently, I believe, still locked away in the county dungeons. I have no word on when his trial is officially supposed to be, but as far as I'm concerned, he can stay there until for the next well, I think he can just find himself in his new accommodations forever. But that's my opinion. Go ahead.
Justice should not be delayed.
Well, that is something you can bring up to Count Lejeune. I will admit, most of our issue, we've been rather preoccupied with trying to make sure that the the new governey and the baronies all decide to play nice, along with the recent nightmare problems. I'm sure if you were to bring that concern up to Lijon, he will take that into consideration. But I cannot promise that it will that it will be enacted as of yet. I'm certain there's something very special they have in mind for Isidore. Regardless, Brooklyn was Brooklyn was no longer a barony, and with the eviction of the former baroness, Isidore's wife, and all of the knights and squires and nobility, the commoners have moved in and have set up a system of democracy. There were votes, and people were put onto a council to be essentially the check and balance against the governor. There was a run for governor, and a governor was made.
Does it work?
It's only been around for maybe the last 4 months, and it hasn't collapsed yet. I haven't. I have been seeing certain issues arise, but as of right now, it's still very young. They will have to. They will have to find their feet, of course, if it's going to be kept
You said
as a
there were
system.
certain checks and balances against the governor.
Mm. Much like the Parliament in England. Put it this way: there you have your governor, and the governor may have maybe the one to present ideas or make certain executive decisions. But if the majority of the council feels that it's a bad idea, they can veto a decision made by the governor.
So the council effectively rules through proxy.
Indeed, it does. Now, to tell you who is on the council as of right now, at least as far as I can tell as of this time, you have the governor themselves, Sam Kephart, Boggin Baker. I highly actually recommend that if you wish to meet the governor, you go meet them at their bakery. Their macaroons are immaculate.
I have no doubt.
See, they do have a baker. You were asking about that the other day.
That is true.
The council consists of. He sort of thinks for a moment. Oh. One seat is, unless it's been filled and I haven't been informed about it, one seat was filled by a knocker by the name of Maurice. Maurice, he says, as he touches like the just so I know I didn't describe this, but he has three lapel pins, chimerical lapel pins. All three of them are heraldry shields. The first one is the one that's highest up, is one that is Legion's, which is like the head of a lion in this like sort of purplish twilight background. The middle one is this green shield with a hammer in the middle of it, but there's just a big giant black bar right across it. And underneath, I'll show you a picture of it later, but is a more complex shield with what seems to be like a diamond right in the middle of it, keys kept around it, and ivy and thorn vines all covering it. Definitely Charles's personal shield. But he taps the middle one. Maurice was very much beloved by the commoners and the nobility alike. He was a master of heraldry. In fact, mine, he says as he taps the lowest one, mine was made by Maurice. He passed away in his sleep. I believe from what I understand, his heart couldn't handle the stress of the nightmares. He was old, had heart palpitations, and I think he was forgetting to take his medicine.
My
His loss is still felt by the county of New Hope.
my condolences. Yes, my condolences.
Yeah, so very sorry to hear about the rather rapid string of deaths that has plagued the county as of late.
Yes, we have been suffering a. Oh, thank you, Carol. I just read Baron Castiolus. That was the Baron of Bronx. Anyway.
Thank you, Carol.
Anytime.
Anytime. Oh, dear God. Well, I guess the voice of God has come.
Okay.
Sorry, brief going. So, have you been enjoying yourself, Carol, listening to this mess?
Very
Surprisingly.
great. If you guys want to make it to the county, I can give you 5 minutes to meet Leon, and the reason I have the voice modulator on.
Yay! Okay, well, once I'm done with Brooklyn, I will bring them on to you. So,
It's
Right.
fine. We don't want to be in Brooklyn any longer where we need to be.
yeah. Well, I haven't told you of who makes up the council yet. It's very important that I do so you can understand how the system works.
Excellent.
So, the other members that I know are confirmed. As I said, I'm not sure who has taken the seat of Maurice as of yet. But the other members are Councilwoman Amber, who owns the Vixen nightclub of Brooklyn. I would highly recommend going there if you wish to meet her, as well as get a better understanding of the people. It's not just a popular place in Brooklyn. Changelings from across the county go to it, so it's a good place to meet
Who again, sorry?
other changelings.
Who ran it?
What?
Who ran the Vixen nightclub?
Oh, who are you?
And I'm asking who ran the Vixen nightclub because I didn't hear.
Oh, Amber. The
Amber.
player is Lily Spinell.
Okay.
Councilwoman Amber. The other three council members are Councilwoman Misha, who I already mentioned is the people's champion, who defeated Isidor's champion. Councilman Hall, who I'm afraid I don't know all that much about, but from the few conversations I've had with him, has a very delectable personality. And then, of course, Councilman William Black. Now, something I should mention, so that you have a full understanding, because you will probably hear it from others outside of myself, and I don't wish this to sound like I'm bad-mouthing anything, but you will hear this, and I wish to make it clear so that you understand it. William, Misha, and Hall are all oathmates. Something that the commoners have come up with here is to strengthen their ideals. They take oaths with one another and form a oath circle, or what they call a motley. They are his motley mates. They also all own the freehold of the free hair. Do you understand what I'm telling you?
They count as one voice, but they are three voices.
And how many what does that leave for a government when they are the majority of the council members?
Not much. They're effectively a shadow cabinet.
Indeed. Or, especially with how vocal one Councilman Black tends to be, though, like I said, I'm sure he would deny it. It doesn't take much to know who's really running the show if one were to really look into it. But I have heard that the Governor Sam has proven to be quite up and coming. I have confidence in Governor Sam. And, well, he says as they start walking their way, if it doesn't work, he sort of smiles. Well, then clearly the little experiment was a bust. I'd talk a little bit more about Staten. I'm afraid that we have not linked the freeholds with Staten. They are very isolationist. Despite the fact they still swear their tithes and fealty to the county, they want nothing to do with the rest of us. They are very much an isolationist group.
Which one? Sorry, the Motley?
No, Staten Island.
Oh, Staten Island. Right.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, there's not much I can say on Staten. There's a Slua who runs an excellent library. Excuse me, full of a lot more, full of knowledge. So if you're needing something a little more local, with pertinent knowledge, but not necessarily wanting to go through the rigmarole of going to Taranar's library itself, I would suggest stopping by her shop first, or her library first, I should say. Well, he says, as they just managed to leave the glamour-filled reality, suddenly there's a buzz on one of his phones, and he takes it out and looks. Oh. Well, it looks like it's your lucky day. Unless you have certain questions for me right now, the Count is summoning us.
Ah, what excellent. He takes a brief look at Lyra with the Mikado sticks timing.
Excellent. Follow me, please. Well, actually, we're probably going to need to catch a cab. They actually come out right back where they started at the Manhattan Freehold. I'm not sure where the county Freehold is. I think it's in Queens, but they take a cab. Or at least maybe they walk to Queens, take a cab the rest of the way, whatever. One way or another, they make it to the county Freehold. And the county Freehold itself is this grand establishment building. Walking in, there's this great sort of mural of what seems to be a number of commoners trying to stop the assassination of the Baroness Iona. It's a rather macabre mural to be having on there, but that's part of the architecture. That's what's there. I didn't put it there. So, and there is one big giant tree that is actually sprouting out of the freehold's floorboards that spirals in this great spiraling staircase up to the next level, which Charles takes them up all to the county of Legion and knocks. And before he stops before he comes in and he looks. How shall I announce you?
There's a brief pause. Arlen considers this.
I don't know.
You may announce me as Chancellor Arlen Grui of the Palace of Crystal Hearts, and if I may, he says to Rhea.
She nods.
Lady Rhiannon of the Palace of Crystal Hearts.
So just make sure I say this right. Can you say yours one more time, please?
1 sec. And chat for you.
Okay, cool.
Actually, there we go. Not palace, kingdom. Okay, that makes more sense. Kingdom for them both. Ooh. There you go.
Okay. Is it in the Facebook chat? Because I can't see the Hangout chat.
Chancellor
Sorry.
Arlen So many consonants in a row, and then an I.
Okay, there we go. Now I got that. And with that, Charles knocks on the door with a gentle rap.
Enter.
Charles opens up. Sir Cararis, Keeper of the Diamond Word, presenting Chancellor Arlen Gree of the Kingdom of Crystal Hearts and the Lady Rhiannon of the Kingdom of Crystal Hearts.
Please come in.
Arlen will walk in. There's the
Yes. Sorry, go on.
There's the briefest glance towards Lyra, because he knows.
She's following right behind him.
Excellent. Yes, good. Pats later, less grounded time.
Leon stands up to greet the people coming in, gives a respectful but appropriate level of bow, expecting the same.
Arlen bows quite fairly deeply, but not overtly. He's quite careful to measure the balance between respect and groveling, particularly when it comes to members of high station. So his bow is somewhat deeper than the Count's, but not like borderline kneeling.
Yeah, Lyra will curtsy. Actually see how much etiquette she has.
Arlen has quite a lot. I think he has 3.
Oh no, I know she doesn't have 3. Oh, she has 2. Oh, okay, she does it fairly well. Like, she's actually doing it fairly quickly though. She seems to be a bit nervous, even though it's quite gracefully. And she's just standing half a step behind her brother.
Your serenity.
Ladies, gentlemen, Sir Cararis, please come in. Take a seat.
Charles closes the door and pulls out chairs for the Lord and Lady, formerly of Arcadia, and finally takes his seat last.
So, have you been giving them the lay of the land?
I have indeed. I was not able to bring them to Staten Island proper, but I did at least give them the information about their isolationist tendencies.
Yes. Still part of the county, yet barely. How are you finding your stay here now that you've arrived?
Gray, sir.
Getting used to my new frame. The introduction was a bit rough, but now that we've had time to establish ourselves, we are beginning to give ourselves a bit of direction, and thankfully have had a bit of guidance. Kind of just, makes a sort of look of acknowledgement to Sir Carrarus, as if crediting him with that.
I'm glad to hear that you are finding some modicum of footing about. From what I understand for your lot, it's a fairly disorienting procedure.
Everybody has been most kind.
Have you met most of the people?
There were a few when we first entered. I've met 2 of them again. Like, for lunch. No? Brunch.
Oh,
As I've
which individuals were these?
You won't speak over anybody.
Presumed.
I am not speaking over anybody right now because I am in polite politician mode.
Especially the Lion Man.
Yeah.
um, so you've been making personal acquaintances and connections. How do you have a position that you find comfortable within the county? Are you seeking to continue on with noble service, or are you going to pick up with the common rabble? He says with a smile.
I cannot speak for my sister, and it is very early days for both of us, but my sensibilities trend towards one particular path, and I don't believe it currently resides with, as it was put, a common rabble.
So no life of bakers and seamstresses for you. Fantastic.
A life
Sir Gerard, have you demonstrated? Oh, go ahead.
I think it might be a little bit of lag.
Mm.
Significant amount of lag.
Yeah. He'd just say, kind of continuing from his statement, a life for some, but not for me, I'm afraid.
Understandable. Very few come from the homelands with the pursuit of an ordinary life. So, with that understood, what exactly do you do? He's looking at both of you.
I am and actually, he realizes something as he asks that, and puts puts 2 fingers to to his forehead as if he's just made some very painful realization. Before I answer, I believe I must apologize. I have caused both myself and my sister to be somewhat misintroduced. Must have been a journey. Yes, I am of House Fiona, and my sister is of House Beaumain. My sincere apologies.
Understandable. The myths can be a son of a bitch as much as they help.
I believe you were
But
questioning.
the question remains: what do you do?
We're fine. You can ask the question. It's fine.
What do you do? What do you do?
That's the 5th time you asked that question, Chris. Answer it.
I'm trying to. No bully. No bully.
He's cookieing you right now.
There are
Answer the
people
question.
I'm banished from court. Well, I guess I'm gonna be playing a red cap now.
Oh, don't leave me alone. I'm supposed to die first, damn it.
Yeah, you don't get the satisfaction this time. Yeah, Alan just says, back in the homelands, I was the advisor to my father, who ruled the kingdom and was, I suppose you could say, the main host for many of the events. I'd maintain and keep an eye on the political structure around the halls of the palace and the various events, and ensured that everything was maintained and as it should be. A diplomat, if you will.
Surprise, surprise, is she a diplomat?
What can I say? I play safely within my boundaries.
Well, hopefully you can discover some new and exciting directions. Not to say that I expect you to abandon your passions, but here in Concordia, the dream lives as a living, breathing, evolving thing. I'm sure you've noticed things aren't exactly consistent with the Arcadian political structure.
No, I see that the Autumn World has changed things.
Well, from the Autumn World came the dreams of us, did it not?
It appears in many ways that too has changed.
And what about you, dear? He looks over at Lyra.
He was still kind of giggling over his joke. When he turns his attention to her, she actually kind of turns red. I was in a tower. She kind of
I'd agree,
smiles
Joyce.
apologetically. It's very beautiful, but I don't really know what it's just foggy. The past is foggy. I
My
apologize.
my sister's journey here appears to have adversely affected her memory.
Unfortunate. Cororis,
Yes, Your Excellency.
you you know the ropes around here fairly well by now, correct?
I would say so, Your Excellency.
I know there's a lot on your shoulders these days, but since these seem to be cousins of yours, perhaps you can help them find a position that would help them help us help them.
I believe I can take a look into what is needed and evaluate their skill sets.
Fantastic. Well, lady, gentlemen, Kararis, as lovely as this meeting has been, I must carry on with well, several things. So, if you would please excuse me, he stands up.
Mm-hmm. Charles gets up
Uh,
and he bows.
And he bows as well, and with a smile, he like gestures for everyone to make their exit so he can exit behind them and close his office.
Yep. Bow politely.
Curtsy and pirouettes around.
And will
We are
politely
out.
take hand of his darling sister so that she can be escorted out safely without running into the door or tripping over her dress or
Oh,
running into the count. I don't know. Something will happen. It's asking.
I mean, as long as he doesn't run into the count, I'm sure that's like.
Yeah, the count will head off in the direction of the Trods. He has work to do and must make his exit. And so must I.
All right. Well, Carol, thank you so much for popping in. Rest those ears.
Yes.
Bye bye, lion friend. Leaving. Smiling and. Oh no, he's back. Okay.
That was weird. I don't know why I got distracted, but... And thus the lion dragged Sir Kararis away. Ah. Well, seems now you've been properly introduced, and it is my task to figure out a place for you to find yourself within our county. So, I'm not going to do that right now. After all, we've taken you on a grand tour. There's a lot of information, and I think there's certain things that you will be needing to get your heads wrapped around. But I will touch base with the both of you, and and we can discuss on possible positions where you might be best suited, or you will find yourselves able to thrive within our society.
Well,
I would really like not to be useless.
oh come now, you're quite useful.
I will make sure that I bring you both something that I will make sure it's something that speaks to you both and will let you thrive. Now, did you have any other questions or concerns for me?
Yes, if there was if I wish to impart suggestions into what purpose I might serve towards the county, would that be best discuss directly with the Count or with yourself, or is there another point of contact for which I should have this discussion with?
Since I believe I have been placed to be in charge of finding a position for you, it would be best that you bring it to me. Um, and I will bring that to the Count. And if there is a point where I feel, if there is something that's discussed and you feel that it might be necessary that you speak to the Count directly about, I will take that information to him and set up the meeting.
It is just that I see that Staten Island is quite isolationist, and perhaps a liaison would be useful.
Yes,
And
indeed.
I did have the most certainly not novel idea, but the idea of attempting to perhaps discover a freehold in one of the sparser baronies within the city.
Mm. Well, these are all possibilities. And depending on how you find it, I have been informed that there are freeholds that are there that have not yet been taken. I have been told that one can actually create one's own freehold depending on their situation. One way or the other, it's going to be up to you to make the decision on where you wish to make your place. Remember this. While you have the opportunity to work with the county directly, affording you a bit more freedom of your living arrangements and your jurisdictions, there is the possibility that you might find that you and your sister might be more settled for baronal territories. No decisions have been made yet, but it's something I would like you to consider, as it is was impressed upon me by the Count himself that those that work for their particular baronies traditionally live within the barony that they work in. Count those that work for the county, however, the county is their domain, so it really doesn't matter where you're living.
Was the Count introduced as a member of House Fiona?
He was.
Okay, yeah. I believe I would prefer, if at all possible, to work for the county directly. Would grant me some flexibility in regards to my traditional role as a diplomat. Of course, I will need to travel between various baronies, and considering we are still finding our footing, it would at least make sense as a temporary arrangement, and certainly make sense as a long-term one. I won't speak for my sister, however, on the matter.
I will keep that in mind. And Lady Rhiannon, is there anything you particularly desire? Or any questions or concerns that you might have?
I would like to stay with my brother, please.
I'm sure I can make those arrangements. Anything else?
I suppose I should begin meeting with each individual baron and major players within each barony. But this is something I suppose I can do in my own time. I would not burden you with it.
I will make sure that the the count is notified that you are making your attempts to at least get to know the major players of the county, which is good, especially if you wish to be working for it. In the meanwhile, I will be maintaining. I will be looking into research. I'm sure there's plenty of room for implement. I will just have to make sure I get a little bit of research to figure out what niches might need to be filled. Anything else? Not just county related, anything personal or concerns you might have.
Lyra's starting to pick the sticks out of her hair.
Considering anything within the county we should be avoiding in particular?
Nightmare Trods in Bronx, as I said, it's a bit hellish. There is a bar known as the Monstrous Regiment. Don't go there. That's it's standing for now, but there are Thalain within it. I would rather you be more an official standing before you deciding to take any bold measures against it.
I see. And
Also,
Nope.
Central Park. Central Park is a no-fly zone, I believe they say here. There are entities within it that are we have an understanding with. We don't go into their territory. They don't mess with ours.
good, let's keep it that way. But I'm wondering,
My lord,
where
my
did they
word.
come from? What?
How did you get in the freehold? That's in violation of our agreement.
Oh no!
Where did they
This means war.
Oh no! No!
Anyway, I'm
God.
just kidding. I am just kidding. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said in the side chat, I'm getting some steep input. So Lyra has been picking the sticks out of her hair and seems to be more obsessed with that at the moment than the actual conversation. She stares at them, then looks at Kararis and kind of almost as a wooden rain kind of throws them on, like not at him, like not, but throws them up in the air so that they kind of fall around him and on him. And then she squats down and just looking at the sticks and looking up at him. Looks up, gets really close to his face, like into his face almost. Even though that probably means that she'll have to tiptoe.
Yeah.
And and just kind of whisper to him, "You could live forever, but if you fail to save her again when they ride again, she will never live as you've known her, ever."
It's hard for Marble to turn paler than it already is. But there is something. I mean, first he was like, mildly annoyed by what was happening, but as soon as this happens and he hears this, there's like his smile just sort of like is frozen in place.
She turns her head slightly, blinks, looks at him.
How do you know that?
That's what they told, as she points at the sticks.
I see.
I'm sorry. Did I do
No,
something
no,
wrong?
it's fine. I appreciate the warning. You he sort of smiles for a moment. Have you knowledge of the future on a is this something that you are capable of on a more controlled basis?
The past is foggy. The future is twirly. It's difficult, but it's clearer.
Hmm, I see. There may be someone who you might want to be mentored by, or at least need the advisement of. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Please think on things. If there's any questions or concerns or requests you have of me, please send them my way. I will give you both my number, he says, and he pulls out his business cards, which has his mortal name on it. It's Charles Egar, criminal psychologist, 32nd Precinct, Manhattan, and it has his number on there. Now, if you excuse me, I'm afraid that I have some personal matters to attend to. And with that, he makes a very respectable bow to the both of them. And he turns and he walks, not so quickly that it's suspicious, but definitely at a somewhat faster pace. And he's heading towards a particular part of the freehold. And there's a look of, and he's smiling, but those eyes of his are cold and very deadly serious as he's making his way towards the court seer.
Rhea looks at her brother, kind of wide-eyed with those eyes that are like bigger than any kind of human eyes. She's not smiling. She blinks a few times, looks surprised. Someone said, "Did I do something bad?"
No, no, it's no problem. If there is, I'll clear it up. Don't you worry.
Did I scare him away?
No, no, no. You did quite finely. Everything is fine.
Doesn't sound at all like he's telling the truth.
It actually kind of is, to be honest.
Oh, she nods and gets closer. There were a lot of people. I want to go home now.
It's okay. Let's go home.
Okay.
I'm not letting you use the computer though, because of those Mikado sticks.
I don't want to use the computer.
All good.
It's even grayer than the world. I don't like it. I think it doesn't like me. It itches.
That's probably because you put a bunch of sticks in your hair.
No, silly. The computer itches. It feels bad.
Okay.
And I think with the siblings taking a cab back home, we can end the scene. Thank you, players, for playing, and thank you, watchers, for watching. This was the scene for Living World of Darkness, Changeling the Dreaming.
You're grounded.
I'm not grounded.